Good evening. It's just 7 o'clock. It's Monday, September 10th, 2012. This is a meeting of Athens City Council. Tonight we're meeting in 4 different committees. City and Safety Services Committee, Finance and Personnel, Transportation, Planning and Development. We are going to begin with City and Safety Services Committee. Member Butler is the chair of that.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, folks, and those present here. We have a nice audience, and good evening to those out in TV land. We have a guest speaker this evening, which I'm very excited to acknowledge. Prior to that, though, we'll get Chair of the Athens Municipal Arts Commission up here to speak and get us started, Mr. Bob Winters.
Tonight, the Athens Municipal Arts Commission asks you to join us in welcoming to Athens 2 dynamic leaders in the important areas of arts advocacy, funding for the arts, and arts education. Many of you have abbreviated copies of their resumes and complete copies of the ANEP4 study that we presented earlier. We have additional copies with us tonight to hand out. You can pick up from Kate if you lack any of these, or if, as Kent just said, you're out there in TV land and would like to have copies of either their bios or the ANEP4 study, you can write us at amac, A-M-A-C, at ci.athens.oh.us. That address is on the city's website, and you can get it there. So, of the 2 guests, ladies first. Donna Collins is the executive director of both the Ohio Citizens for the Arts, our statewide arts advocacy group, and the Ohio Alliance for Arts Education. Donna will be here both today and tomorrow, meeting with local arts and community leaders while visiting and working with her friend and colleague, our guest speaker. I'm going to ask Donna to just stand up and wave and say hi. Americans for the Arts is the nation's advocacy organization for the arts. Randy L. Cohen is their Vice President of Research and Planning. The Arts and Economic Prosperity 4 study that Athens County, AMAC, partnered with is one of Randy's noted national publications. Without repeating his bio, let me just say that he's among the most noted experts in the field of arts funding, research, policy, and using the arts to address community issues. Much of his work relates to the advancement of American culture and to at-risk youth. He regularly appears in the media, including the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, CNN, CNBC, and PR. Mayor Weil, City Council members, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Randy L. Cohen.
All right, am I testing if I'm working here now? That's it. Light on? There you go. All right, there it is. Okay, well, it's a small room. I hope everyone can hear me. Thank you so much. It's great to be here. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and great to actually be back in Athens. I was here just a little over a year ago for a niece's graduation. And it was a wonderful visit then. I've had a great visit so far today. The Kennedy Museum, Passion Works, Arts West, the Dairy Bar, and there's so much arts and culture to be seen and experienced here. I hope everybody really feels a sense of pride, because let me tell you, there's a lot of great great art here, and really Athens is a great arts town. So I've got an interesting economic impact study for you to tell about today. And I want to, you know, we all love the arts. We appreciate how they, you know, improve our quality of life, how they're fundamental to our humanity. They entertain us, they delight us, they inspire us. Arts are a fundamental component of a healthy community. I think we all get that, and I'd say let's just stipulate that. And I want to challenge you to think about the arts a little bit differently today, and that is as an industry, one that supports jobs, generates government revenue, and is a cornerstone of tourism. So about a month ago, let me start with a little story, just to illustrate some of what I'm going to talk about today. I went out to a night at the theater. You'd think with Americans for the Arts on my business card, I'm going to the arts all the time, right? You know, I wish. You know, kids, travel, jobs, I have as much trouble getting out the door as the next person. But it was date night with my wife, and actually if you turn the clock 2 weeks before that, we were trying to figure out, well, what's the plan going to be, you know? And you know, we got on the website, we were looking at all kinds of possibilities. Was it going to be a dance performance, a theater performance? And we settled on a theater event and pulled out our credit card and just got the tickets right there online, right? You know, it's so convenient now. Printed them out. We were ready to go. So when the night came for the show, dressed up, got our little paper tickets, jumped in the car and drove. And like so many people, first thing we did was we went out and had dinner. Right? Often people do that. You start, you know, the performance, you go out to dinner first. And we went to a nice restaurant we like and spent about $60, so it was a nice dinner. And from there, back in the car, drove to the theater and parked in the parking garage, and it was a toll garage, right? So it was $10 to park the car, and then finally got into the theater itself. And there, you know, we shared a glass of wine. We were there a little early. You know, we had seats right square in the middle of the audience there, so thought, well, we better start with, you know, with a visit to the facilities, you know, right, so we don't have to disrupt the performance. And then actually got into the actual auditorium, and it's an old theater with some beautiful chandeliers hanging, and we sat there and we looked at the program and, you know, sort of read about what we were about to see. And all this before the theater curtain has even gone up. It's still 5 minutes to 8. Now, think of all the industries that have been touched as a result of this arts event that don't even include the arts yet. Well, computer programmers and web designers, right? You know, they're, all of them are working for these arts organizations. We did the online commerce, so there was a banker and finance folks because we, you know, did the credit card. We didn't drive too far, but there was a transportation cost. Certainly gas isn't cheap anymore. And we drove to the restaurant. At the restaurant, you know, our $60. Well, the owner of that restaurant's taking some of that money home in terms of entrepreneurial income. The waiter who waited on us, you know, that waiter's paid. And even the, you know, the restaurant, you know, all their produce comes from within 100 miles, right? So, you know, local suppliers, local growers, and that was the dinner. And then off to the parking garage. Actually, I don't know who owns that garage. Somebody does, whether it's municipal or private, but somebody's taken a piece of those $10, including the clerk, the attendant that tore our little ticket there, and into the theater we went. Had a glass of wine, so catering is affected. And, you know, before we went in there, right, everybody needs a good plumber. You know, it doesn't matter if you run a theater or if you're running your house. And then we got into the auditorium, and there's beautiful chandeliers. That's got to be done by electricians. You know, those are very delicate, take a lot of work to hang, to electrify. And finally, the program itself. Well, those are designed, you know, and printed. Arts organizations, lots of design, lots of printing, just to get that. And again, it's now 5 minutes to 8. Well, finally, the curtain goes up. And that's when a lot of people start to think about, oh yeah, of course, arts are an industry, they're a business. You know, those actors are getting paid, and the savvy folks will think that, well, of course there was a director, you know, who directed that, and a scenic artist who did those sets, so they're probably making a living too doing some of this work. So lots of industries, lots of jobs, lots of people affected by just this one event beyond what we sort of generally think about the arts. That happens thousands of times a night everywhere. That happens millions of times a night across the country. And that's what we set out to capture in this research study. You know, a very quantitative measure of what's a very qualitative kind of experience. Again, think in the arts. Arts are an industry. They're a business. So what do we do? Well, Athens County, one of 182 communities studied, and we're going to jump to the PowerPoint here, and you can see popping right out there, everybody see that technical effect? That was all me, ladies and gentlemen. So no 14-year-olds involved in the making of that. Anyway, as you can see, this study covers all 50 states plus the District of Columbia. We've got communities as small as 1,600 people and as large as 4 million. So a whole range of diverse communities, small rural, large urban, suburban, ring cities, and really what you see in every single community that we study, that the arts are a measurable industry. And so that's what we set out to do. Now, when I say arts, we're only talking nonprofit arts and culture organizations. So we're not including, movie theaters generally, or the for-profit galleries, or any of those folks. Nonprofit arts and culture organizations. We sent surveys to about 128 of them and heard back from a little over 30 of those organizations, and so, which was just pretty much in line with the national compliance rate on those. Gathered data, we pretty much got the information from the large major organizations and those that umbrella a lot of the programs here. So that's how we got the organizational spending. Now, I also talked in my opening vignette there about the audience spending. We did 1,306 audience surveys asking people how much they spent related to that arts event that they're attending. So lots of data gathered, and that's all right here in Athens County. Now, how do we come up with our economic impact findings? We work with a team of economists at Georgia Tech's School of Economics, and what they do is they've customized what's called an input-output analysis model for every community that we study. And what it is, if you imagine your worst calculus nightmare, that's what these things begin to approach, But basically, short story, it takes all those data, a complex model, and a million calculations to come up with just the Athens County data. Very localized, very specific data. Why do we go through that rigor? Well, because $50 spent here is going to have a different economic impact than $50 spent in Columbus, and different again than $50 spent in, my little hamlet of Tacoma Park, Maryland. So again, that's what we wanted, very specific and reliable data. We only use data from the organizations that we collected information from. We don't make estimates for non-respondents. And so, when I talk about these numbers, these are real dollar figures. That's a little bit of background. That's what we did. So what did we find out? Well, for starters, nonprofit arts and culture industry, that is spending by the organizations and their audiences, $24.3 million of economic activity every year. That's a big industry. What do you do with a $24 million industry? Well, you hold on to it, you nurture it, you grow it. That's $24 million of economic activity that takes place every year. Now, $16.8 million of that is spending by the arts organizations themselves. Again, just the organizations that we collected data from, and that's all in your report. And you can point to those details if you want. $16.8 million. Now, that's a myth buster for a lot of folks. Again, we all appreciate the arts. We love the arts. They really help create the communities that we want to live in. But the fact is, they're businesses. They employ people locally in the community. They purchase goods and services locally. They're members of the Chamber of Commerce, and they work with the CVB. They help market and promote the region. Arts organizations are good business citizens. So just that story alone is worth telling. So now what did we find out as a result of the economic impact of this? 739 full-time equivalent jobs are supported in Athens County. Now, economists like to use the term full-time equivalent because it's a very much more reliable measure of employment. The arts, and of course many of the hospitality industries that we're talking about, there's a lot of part-time employment. If you were just going to count heads at all these organizations and all these places, your numbers would be a lot bigger. But it's a manager's prerogative, right, to hire one full-timer, two half-timers, four quarter-timers. Bottom line, though, it's a more accurate, reliable measure of employment. One thing about the arts jobs also, they're necessarily very local jobs. The arts are not an industry that's going to be sent overseas. It just can't. If you've got a symphony orchestra, you're going to need 100 players every night. You can't, I don't look forward to the day where we've got, first violinists and 99 Macintosh computers or something. But, that we don't want. But, and unless that happens, that's really the only way you're going to use technology to increase efficiency and economize the way so many sectors do. These are very local jobs. The curators at the museums, the performers, the designers, the artists, all very local, local employment. And really, that's again the good news story here, because arts, food for the soul. Arts also putting food on the table for 739 households here in the county. Well, what else did we learn? Arts organizations and the industry generates a lot of government revenue. $2.2 million in revenue to local and state governments. And that includes taxes, fees, that's all the different ways, governments at the local and state level, get their income. Now, nationally, total government revenue is about $23 billion at the federal, state, and local levels. If you look at the collective outlay, it's about $5 billion. So again, in that, the big picture, government getting a good return on that investment. When we support the arts, we're investing in industry that provides not just cultural benefits, but also economic benefits. Well, what else did we learn here? So that's it, big industry, now millions, billions. Let's boil this down a little bit, because the fact is the arts, like every other industry, have an economic impact. That's no real secret. I could give anybody here, well, I shouldn't give it to an elected official, anybody in the audience a $10 bill, and my economist will, track along after you and write what you do with that on your, his yellow notepad, punch that into his computer, and a million calculations later, we'll have some of these economic impact findings. But unlike most industries, the arts generate significant amounts of event-related spending. And again, just think of the last time you went to a show or a festival. You may have had a meal and gone and paid for parking, went out for dessert or drinks afterwards. You have little ones at home. You double the cost of the evening on babysitting, right? So the real racket in all of this, I think. But so let's boil down to an individual unit. And sorry you have to keep turning around there, Mr. Mayor. But we, again, 1,306 audience intercept surveys, which is a major statistical oversample. A phenomenal job of research collected. So thank you to the arts leadership here. Thank you to the arts organizations who provided these data and allowed their attendees to be surveyed. So what did we find out? The typical attendee spends $25.75 per person per event, not including the cost of admission. $25.75 excluding admission. Now, some people ask, why exclude admission? Well, and remember, very conservative approach, not looking to inflate anything here. We're also getting expenditure data from the organizations. So those admissions dollars are going to the organizations in revenue and then coming out in expenditures, so we're catching it there. So it's a way to ensure we're not double counting. $25.75, and this pretty much lays out as national, about half of it on food and snacks, and a little bit on transportation, some retail, and some of you might be looking at lodging now and saying, wow, can you still get a room for $4.79, and would you want to if you could? No, you wouldn't. Well, remember, these are averages. Not everybody has an overnight expense. Just to put this in some context, nationally, 152,000 audience intercept surveys, $24.60 per person per event. So you're seeing actually a little higher than average spending here. Now, we wanted to get at this whole cultural tourism notion. We wanted to find out a little bit more about these attendees. And so we asked all 1,306 of them for their zip code. Because we wanted to find out, do they live in Athens County, in which case they'd be local, or are they from outside the county, in which case they'd be non-local. 33%, a third exactly, come from outside Athens County. And that's actually just a hair better than the national average, which was 32%. But that's a very strong number, 33% outside the county. And do they spend differently? Well, you bet. Look at this. Look at the typical non-local attendee spends $45.62 per person per event. Now, we asked these folks another question. We asked the non-locals a real simple question. Why are you here? Why'd you come from outside the county all the way here to attend this arts event? Was it to visit family? Were you here on business? Maybe had a free night, attended a show. Or what 68% said, we came specifically for this arts event. So now you can see arts and culture, again, is this product. And when we are investing in that product, we're investing, again, in something that is improving our quality of life, but also is drawing people to the community, and those people are spending money. So, the more you can draw these folks in, $45.62 is a great bang for the buck. And interestingly, of the non-local attendees, 17% of those had an overnight expense, and they spent an average of $153 per person per event. So I think, as we all know, right, once you get that head in a bed, the cash registers really start ringing. So this is now, where we start to see all this great arts and culture, and just that I caught in one afternoon here. I know there's so much more I'll get to see tomorrow, but it's a real magnet. It's a real draw for folks. Now, let me tell you a little something about the local attendees. And we asked the folks who live in Athens County a question. We asked them, if this arts event weren't taking place, would you have just skipped the night altogether and stayed home, done something else? Or 39% said we would have traveled to a different community to attend a similar kind of arts event. So over a third of the residents here will travel elsewhere. And so again, arts and culture now not only showing itself as a draw, pulling people into the community, but in fact also keeping our neighbors right here, our neighbors and their hard-won discretionary dollars, right? This is all discretionary spending. So keeping folks and their money right here in town. And this is where, when you start to talk to your restaurateurs and your local merchants, and I think they all learn the same talking point at restaurant school, It's like, I don't need the weekend section to see if there's some great performance or some great exhibit happening. I can see it. It's cheeks and seats, right? It's right here in my establishment. And so, that's what these numbers really start to show us. One other thing that we look at, which is just a number I love, and that's, the citizen army. We asked the organizations, the responding organizations had 1,526 volunteers that contribute over 68,000 hours every year. And that is just such a great story. That to me, the community is really engaged. They're not just attending, they're going, but they're actually participating. They're part of what keeps this whole sector vibrant and happening. And you can actually put a dollar value on that. The independent sector, which tracks all things, nonprofit and volunteering, actually has the average volunteer hour in 2010, $21.36. So we can all go home and estimate, what our organization's value is there. But that's a $1.5 million value. Now, we don't include that as part of the 24.3, so it's just an extra, but absolutely worth mentioning and a great story. So the big, again, over 1,000 audience surveys, 30 organizational surveys, these very complex economic models. What it really comes down to is just a couple of numbers. Arts and culture, nonprofit arts and culture, a $24.3 million industry, supports 739 full-time equivalent jobs, $2.2 million in revenue to local and state government. And again, remember the audience spending piece, 2575. That is a real area, that can be capitalized on. Let me tell you one other thing about the audience spending. And, we don't go to, it's like, well, what do we think the most expensive event is? Let's go to the opera every night or the symphony every night and do the interviews there. They're spread throughout the county. They include, a nice evening event, Saturday theater, thing with my kids. That's a couple ice cream cones and out, right? And on the, or a free open air type of festival event. So a great representative sample. So you can be confident in those numbers. Actually, for those of you who have a report, I want you to just show you one thing. And if you look on the back cover, if you don't have a report, it'll be easy to find here. What you'll see is, you got your copy there? All right. Yeah, there it is. You're going to see we've got a number of national partners that are part of this study. Now, America is the land of national organizations, right? And there's over 40,000 national organizations. There's a lot of people don't know, there's actually a national organization for the national organizations. You move to Washington, you can't stop throwing up, but there it is. But you'll see organizations like, that many of you might be involved in, the U.S. Conference of Mayors, the National League of Cities, National Association of Counties, National Conference of State Legislatures. Or on the business side, you'll see the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, or the Conference Board, which is an organization, for businesses, the Fortune 1000 companies in this country. For the tourism folks, Destination Marketing Association International. These organizations put their logos on these reports for several reasons. One, they buy into the fact that the arts are a fundamental part of a healthy community. And second, they buy into the methodology, they buy into these findings. Trust me, these folks, if they didn't think this stuff was rock solid, they're not going to stick their logos on there. So, I work for Americans for the Arts, right? So you got to sort of think about a credibility issue right off the bat. So, that's why we work with these folks, soup to nuts. And in fact, just this past summer, at the U.S. Conference of Mayors annual meeting in Orlando, Florida, every year they pass a number of resolutions that are, about issues critical to community development. And one of them was about the Arts and Economic Prosperity Study. Talked about the data, but the big therefore was, the U.S. Conference of Mayors urges mayors across the country to invest in the arts. It's good for jobs, it's good for tourism, it's good for employment, and it's good for quality of life. I always say, 1,000 mayors can't be wrong, right? So anyway, the arts are a fundamental and healthy part of a community. And this study really helps us understand that they're not some luxury worth supporting in prosperous times, but rather are an industry that supports jobs and generates government revenue. I want to thank you for the support you make for the arts and that you provide for the arts with your time, with your resources, with your leadership. Everything you do to support the arts is important, and you're important for doing it. Thank you. We have some time for questions, if folks have any. There's a lot of information there. Yes?
I noticed that this is the AP4, and two questions for you. One, the bigger picture, and that this is the fourth report. Are there any trends that you've seen nationwide that you think are important for us in Athens to be knowing about? And then my other question would be directed to you, or maybe follow-up conversations later, especially like the destination marketing, takeaways that we can take from the report and use here in the community to strengthen the arts, build on it, and expand.
Yes. So first question, it is our fourth national study. We do these studies every 5 years. They've got about a nice 5-year shelf life. And what we found, this year focuses on 2010. Certainly not the best year economically, right? I mean, because if we wanted it really bad, we could have done 2009. But the year before that was 2005. and think of what was going on, actually. In fact, I can jump ahead to a slide here, just to sort of illustrate some of this. Between 05 and 2010, unemployment almost doubled, home foreclosures tripled, consumer confidence dropped in half, tough times economically. What we saw with the arts was the organizations had about a 3% decrease nationally in the big picture. Some are, communities are up, some are down. But so while we saw huge cuts in a really strained economy, I mean, the Great Recession, right? We all lived through it. Arts organizations themselves, pretty modest decreases overall. And I think what that shows is the organizations themselves are very resilient, and I would dare say, more durable than the economic cycles. Yes, we lost some organizations and, new ones came in. There's always sort of a churn there. Where we did see a big change was in the audience spending. Now, just to give you some national numbers, in 05, it was $27.79. 5 years later, $24.60. Down 11%, and then when you account for inflation, that's a 21% hit. Now, that's exactly what you'd expect to see, right? 2010, people are staying a little closer to home, not traveling as far. People are still going out to the arts, but maybe, either it's a less expensive restaurant, eating dinner first and then going out. Tourism, travel, food and beverage industries all saw decreases. Professional sports attendance also saw decreases. So, that's really where I think, we saw the biggest change in that audience spending piece. Does that make sense there?
Way
Answer
to
that question?
encourage local audiences even more to stay in their community, or not
Yes.
stay necessarily, but to take advantage of something that's a good bargain.
Right, absolutely. Well, in fact, drive markets, did better, and if you were a big port, that depends on people flying in, those folks really hurt. Nationally, in the last study, 39% of attendees were non-local. That dropped to 32% being non-local. So your point is exactly well taken. And everybody spent less. The non-locals, the locals. So, it's just a scary economy.
So Randy, then to piggyback that,
Yeah.
to piggyback that question, suggestions that you might have or positive situations that you've witnessed from this point forward. So suggestions that you might have to succeed from this
Yeah.
point forward with this information for communities such as ours.
Yes, and I think I'll tie that to Councilwoman's question. So, what this shows us really is that what we've got here is a lot of opportunity, and that, we're talking about, again, not a needy charitable frill, but rather something that's part of can be part of a fundamental economic development strategy. And it can happen, a couple ways. So what are different things we can do? Well, obviously, the arts require investment, they require support, so there's, the appropriation from the local government, the state government, and as well as, contributions from the private sector side as well. So we've all got a role right there. That's usually what people reflexively think first. Well, okay, so more support. And, there's good reason to show that that's a valuable investment. But that's not the only thing that can be done. Every city, every county I go to, has different levels, different places of citizen engagement, advisory committees or commissions, the way communities are involved, whether it's signage or roads or, just all the different committee type of work that we do. Is there arts representation on all of those? Do you have artists or arts organizations that are part of all these different aspects that really help make our community go? Because what the artist brings so often is a way of doing things that just makes good decisions better. Quite simply. And I'll give you an example. There's if you're putting up ironwork, around your trees, on the side, okay, we've gone through, we work with the arborists, we've dropped a bunch of new trees in, how do we protect them from bicycles and everything else? And, so a lot of communities do put up some ironwork. Well, you could just get something, from the, from the place, sort of forged and plain. But, if you bring in an artist, you can actually turn that into a really interesting, products, something that, is really fabulous to look at, that, adds beauty and aesthetics to the community. Where was I? I think I was in Norwich, New York last week. Manhole covers. There's like, well, they had to redo all the manhole covers, and and they got artists involved in that, and they turned it into a feature basically. And I was like, wow! And everyone's so proud of this. I was Phoenix, Arizona, about 25 years ago, had to redo their solid waste treatment facility, 27th Avenue Solid Waste Treatment Facility. I'm talking about the dump. Right? Well, I thought, how can we make the dump a better place to work, a little better connected to the community, and how can we start to help people better understand about their solid waste and their impact on the community, instead of just this, big cement wall that you throw your junk over and, run away before it lands. And so they brought in artists. And artists were involved in the whole conception, design, and building of the Phoenix Dump. Short story, now 25 years later, Phoenix Dump is a place 250,000 people a year go to see the rotating art exhibitions. And in fact, Americans for the Arts we had a conference there some years back, and we did our closing party there. It was called Dance at the Dump. So, and it's, it was fabulous. And, business, can do this as well, as a way of building creativity. What are some of the other things we're all worried about, right? Well, we're worried about brain drain. How do we turn that into brain gain? And business leaders are worried about, a creative 21st century workforce. If you look at research by the Conference Board, and again, the Conference Board are the folks that give you the leading index of economic indicators and the Consumer Confidence Index, well, you see in their studies of business leaders, creativity has soared to the top 5 applied skills that business leaders are looking for. And in fact, they've leapfrogged the 3 R's. I think we think about that. Well, of course, you have to be able to read, write, and do math. But you know what? If you can't come up with a creative idea, if you can't improve on an existing, technology or product, or create a whole new market, 10 years ago, who knew we all needed an iPad, right? And it's we didn't, but here it is, and they're selling it by the millions. That's where that creativity comes in and augments the basic skills of science, engineering, math, and in fact, 85% of business leaders surveyed in this say creativity is of high importance in their hiring, and 72% of those folks say we can't find the people we're looking for. And in fact, they don't even have a good measures for creativity. There's not a typing test for creativity. But 27% actually cop to the checkbox about how do you assess creativity is based on the candidate's appearance during the interview. So, those are some of the challenges. I was always so thankful for an anonymous survey. I've never had the guts to check that myself. But so again, these are some of the benefits that come with an economic and vibrant cultural community. One last thing about this new workforce, the 21st century workforce, it's very different than when a lot of us got started. Because now, people are picking the communities that they want to live in, moving there, and knowing, well, then I'll find work. And this is big cities, it's small cities, it's all kinds of places. What are these workers looking for? Always near the top of the list. Creative, culturally vibrant communities. Everybody wants to live in a cool place, right? And so, that again, this is the free stuff. We invest in that great arts community, and obviously, we get all those benefits. Well, here's just some of the free benefits, because if that's attracting a workforce, what follows? Well, the companies. Because these days, what do you need? You need an electrical outlet and room for the satellite dish, you're good to go. So, these are some of the other benefits that you get, you reap the benefits of with, a vibrant arts community.
How does OU, Ohio University, figure into all your data? And are they considered a nonprofit or?
So it's certainly not the whole university or anything like that. Did we, what was one of the yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Bob on the mic.
Nothing academic from anywhere in any source in the county could be allowed in
Right.
the thing.
So this is
nothing
all-
from OU, that was academic, nothing from Hocking, nothing from the public school system. So from OU, what is in there is NPR and PBS, WOUB, because that's a public service. What's in there is the Performing Arts Series.
Okay.
What's in there is the OU Press, the Kennedy Museum. But for instance, looking at those, nothing in the College of Fine Arts was allowed
Like
in.
the student exhibits and such? Okay, great.
Yeah, basically, if it looks and operates like a nonprofit, we include it, even though technically, those might be, under a public setting, so.
Okay, great.
Councilman?
That answer right there makes it, I think, to me, even more overwhelming how impressive these figures are. The question that I had was, knowing how steeped in culture and the arts define a city that we are here in Athens, I'm curious as to whether you had any data, you may have already mentioned this, I don't know, but is there any comparable Appalachian cities that you can kind of compare Athens to in terms of these numbers so that everyone can kind of wrap their head around within the Appalachian environment, the arts, how strong or where we stand in
Right.
comparison?
You know what, actually, I would have to, not off the top of my head, but I'll tell you, in the full report, you can find the data for all the 182 communities. And, the comparisons, are always so locally driven. But we'd be happy to work with you on that and make sure you get that answer, and you can see the communities of which ones you think, Athens County best stacks up with, and we can get you those
Maybe
comparisons.
part of an answer is that when you looked at, they divided the partners into demographic groups, and our group was between 50 and 99,000. We were double the mean in income and double the mean in jobs produced for the average from that demographic group,
Yeah. So,
which would indicate a very strong.
yeah.
Very strong.
Yes. So in here in the county, 739 full-time equivalent jobs, and this is page 3 of your report. The median in this population region measure was 489, just to give you an idea. The comparisons are always a little tricky because there's population density and all kinds of questions. But I'll say this: Athens came out very strong comparatively. And, being here, I'm not surprised.
Mayor.
One other question concerning the for-profit side of arts. Now, does that actually mimic or similar? Is there coordination between for-profit versus not-for-profit? I mean, we talked about the university as the academic side, and I looked at that as a powerhouse for much of this, but what's the other side of that you don't measure, I guess, or you don't get involved in measuring?
Yeah, and absolutely, the nonprofits are pretty much generally the smaller side of what we're looking at. But actually, what I just put up on the screen, anticipating that question, is this is from our Creative Industries research study. And this was an attempt, basically, to answer that question. Arts and Economic Prosperity is nonprofits, but we know that's just a portion of all the organizations, arts businesses. And so I used data from Dun & Bradstreet. And Dun & Bradstreet, as you may know, it's the most comprehensive and trusted source for business information in the United States. They track 21.5 million active U.S. companies, and they code them all very specifically. So I can figure out which ones are the arts businesses. So nonprofit theaters, museums, ballet companies, but also for-profit film, architecture, design. And nationally, 905,000 of the nation's businesses are arts businesses. And that's about 4%, 4.1%. And so you can see right here in Athens County, and these are just businesses with a Dun & Bradstreet number, 130 arts businesses that employ 468 people, and each of these dots represents an arts business, and you're actually pretty close to 3.9%, pretty close to the percentages nationally, and similarly with the employment as well. Now, this is actually a pretty understated figure because so many nonprofits actually don't have a Dun & Bradstreet number. So,
Like all the bands. We are awash with bands.
yeah, all right.
That's what the neighborhoods say.
So, there's a bit of a snapshot. So there's absolutely a presence, of the for-profit industry here as well.
One of the other things is the previous council member Patterson, the one back there, started a percentage for art for many of the facilities in the city. Do other cities do that, and does that have an effect?
Yes, absolutely. So Athens would be one of about 350 cities that have this Percent for Art program. And I think they're fabulous because they really just are about placemaking, and it's opportunity when we're, having new buildings or, doing some of the great adaptive reuse efforts, that I've seen around here. It's bringing art in the built environment. And it's just art. It just sort of helps create that energy and beautifies a community on the street. So, and it's done in a lot of really interesting ways too. One of the things I'm pretty excited about is in Kansas City. There's a new public library that was just built, and it's a library. And it's got a 3-story parking garage. But somebody had the great idea of let's not just make it a 3-story cement garage. What can we do to make this, augment and make it some kind of cool feature? And so what it looks like now is, it looks like a 3-story tall library shelf with books that are 21 feet tall and 8 feet wide, and it'll have, Huckleberry Finn. And so it'll be the spine of all these books. And they did a whole big community process, about what people's favorite books were and all that kind of thing. And you know what? They're building the garage anyway. But the amazing thing is, they're interviewing and tracking the people. People are coming from all over the place to see the parking garage of the library, So it can really be turned into, a real interesting feature for a lot of buildings as well. So obviously the big expense was the garage. This didn't cost a lot more afterwards, but it's what makes it.
Mr. Cohen, thank you for coming. Thank you, Mr. Winters, for including us in his tour of Athens. We're happy. The City Council of Athens has always been supportive of the arts. Bob Winters is looking for ways to encourage us to support more, I believe. And I'm sure we will.
And Bob is not alone.
He has a cadre there, yeah. Okay. Again, thank you. We need to move on to and I understand that several of you need to leave, so we'll kind of
May I
just...
say one more thing?
Yes, please.
He's doing his full thing tomorrow at 1 o'clock in the Forum Theater and at 5 o'clock in Stewart's. And he and Donna both will be available for questions and answers after that, so that we have a complete deal here for the council.
I'm sorry, did you say Stewart's Opera House?
Stewart's Opera House at 5 o'clock, and tomorrow at 1 o'clock in the Forum Theater at the basement of the RTV building.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. So we're going to require you to play banjo at Stewart's, is that it? No?
I don't know, what's our percent of budget? You need to.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if we know.
tonight, that is the ladies after New Year.
The money we put into the money we put into the roundabout. The stone. Yeah.
Anything else appropriate. Are you saying it? No, we really are doing the north side.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think so.
But there's also
Thank you, Bob.
You know, considering we
Luckily,
have,
they're focused on Jim.
Kent, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You ready to move on?
sure. Thank you again to everyone in the audience and those of you in TV land for your attention and participation in our speaker. We're now moving on to the next item on the city's Service Safety Committee, which is a discussion titled Keep America Beautiful and resolution, which member Pappy is going to speak on. Thank you.
So tonight, we'd like to introduce a resolution by all council members about becoming affiliated with the Keep America Beautiful organization. Recently, Southeastern Ohio became an affiliate. And so for many of you, you know that, for me personally and some other people here on council, beautification of Athens and reduction of litter has been something that we've been working on for many, many years. We've had committees that have worked on that. The university now has a regular cleanup day called Beautification Day. So when this affiliate information came forward, and they were quite impressed with, the national organization was quite impressed with what we've already done here, and we also had data to provide them. So that was pretty cool that we had already done that, and so they were quite impressed. And so tonight, I would like to propose this resolution for us to become a affiliate of Keep America Beautiful. And this is, just on the side, one of the only rural, we may be the only rural in the country, but one of very few rural organizations with Keep America Beautiful. There are quite a few counties involved with this, and the person who is the main kind of coordinator for our area is based at the Wayne National Forest Office, Gary Chansey. So, would you be reading this, or do I read this, or how do we do that?
No, you can read it. Go
Should I
ahead.
read it?
Yeah.
Any questions?
I had a question. How did Southeastern Ohio, how did that become an affiliate? That seemed, I didn't know there was an organization.
I think it may have been generated because the Wayne kind of is spread out over southeastern Ohio, the Wayne National Forest, and they kind of pulled in the other counties and the other cities. For instance, Lawrence County is involved, Washington County is involved, Athens County, and I think that's kind of how that happened. And like I said, we may, I can't remember exactly, but we are either the only rural or there are very few rural organizations.
They indicated that we were the largest collaborative because of the 13 counties that are involved, so.
And I think many rural areas don't always have the organizational structure to pull something like that together. So I know that there was some concern with the Keep America Beautiful corporate model and that whole kind of thing, but I think our feeling from those of us who have worked in this area for the last 5 or 6 years was, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. They have a lot of resources, they have a lot of organizational ability, and they're connected with a lot of grant funders. So it's a way to channel the information and then bring that back into our community. So that's why we think it's a good idea.
If you want to, go ahead, for the people who are watching, this is just a committee meeting. We'll have it up for acceptance at a future date.
A resolution supporting the Keep America Beautiful organization in Southeast Ohio and recognizing the Athens Clean and Beautiful affiliate. Whereas the city of Athens desires to improve the physical quality of community life And whereas a clean environment contributes to the emotional, physical, and economic well-being of our citizens, and whereas Keep America Beautiful, Inc. is a national nonprofit community improvement organization with the focus areas of litter prevention, beautification, and waste reduction and recycling, whereas the affiliate program developed by Keep America Beautiful, Inc. will assist greatly in educating our community about littering behavior, waste handling, and beautification, and thereby enhancing community appearance. Be it resolved by the Council of the City of Athens, Ohio, Section 1, the City of Athens does hereby support the Keep America Beautiful organization and participation in Keep Southeastern Ohio Beautiful. Section 2, further, the City of Athens does hereby recognize the Keep America Beautiful Athens Clean and Beautiful affiliate. Section 3, this resolution shall be in full force and effect at the earliest moment permitted by law upon its passage and approval by the mayor.
So is that 1 or 3 readings?
One reading.
Is there a cost?
There is no cost that we have been informed of.
There is no cost, but we indeed participate, and so we go to the meetings and work together on collaborative efforts. So, and as Michelle stated, there are many grant opportunities that we can tap into, and they love having Athens and Ohio University. I think will become a future partner because of the work we're already doing, diverting from the waste stream. So.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Go ahead, Kent, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Member Pappy. If there's no other questions regarding the Keep America Beautiful resolution, we can move on to miscellaneous, which there may be, according to the City Service Safety Director.
Thank you. We've been working on the memorandum of understanding and the different issues related to that, but we have a mutual assistance agreement that's been in place for many years, and this is for the mutual assistance between Ohio University Police Department and the City of Athens Police Department that will expire late October. The two police chiefs are actually reviewing that and revising it now, so that will come forward at a future time, and we'll probably need the clauses for adoption and everything emergency, so we have that continuing.
And again, this is a long-standing agreement that we've been
Just needs to be
collaborating with.
It's been 4 years. They're asking why they couldn't extend it longer, but we'll bring that to you in a draft form. I just wanted to kind of give you a heads up that we're kind of getting up to that time frame.
Thank you. Any other miscellaneous? I don't have any.
Okay, let's move on to the Finance and Personnel Committee. Chair Chris Knisley.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. We have 5 items tonight. The first one is the AFSCME contract renewal, and this is for the AFSCME local Unit 2403. Service Safety Director Mosley shared some of the details of that with us last week. I'll highlight just a few of the details tonight to make you remind us of what that is. So this new 3-year contract would be retroactive to August 26, 2012, and go through 2015. And what this does is covers conditions for employment of 54 of our 171 full-time city employees who are members of this AFSCME union. It did several things. The number one thing being that there will be percentage salary increases each of those 3 years, 2.5% in year 1, 2% in year 2, 2% again then in year 3. A few of the other changes that happened, comp time is now at 160 hours. That language is clarified in the contract. There will be a shift, a preference clause added. Some of the bumping rights were clarified. Donations of sick leave up to 40 hours are now allowed, and the conditions for that are spelled out on the pages in the contract. The injury leave, there were some changes to that. The other significant item will be that employees had paid a set rate on the health plan, and that will now be set as a percentage, as some of our other contracts have moved to that also. So that will be 35% of the fixed cost of the health. There will be a shift differential that's allowed for those working the midnight shift, so that's slightly higher pay for working that particular hours. And then the allowance for clothing and tools has been clarified also. On the sets of clothes that are issued, I think those stays the same on the initial hire, and then after that, some of the replacement clothing, that item has been clarified. The other thing to note is that we move towards electronic pay periods. All employees hired after the starting of this new contract on August 26th will have the paychecks through electronic deductions, or directly to the bank electronically. So that's a cost savings for the city, more efficient, and it's actually gets the money into the checking or savings accounts of employees more quickly than even the paper can do.
And almost all current employees are under that plan also.
Yes. Any other comments or questions or?
I just would like to state it's our largest bargaining unit, 58, just under 60 employees, and that we feel that the concessions that we reached in terms of going to the 35% fixed cost for insurance, along with the increase in the pay and some other reduction, and like you indicated, in terms of injury leave and comp time, that we've reached a good agreement.
Okay.
The only other thing I was going to add, when council looks at this, that they might wonder about is the comp time increase. What happens with the city is there are limits on how much comp time someone can accrue, and then we automatically pay them overtime. They get paid for that extra time, they just can't continue to get comp time. And they increased it from 160 hours to 240. However, 240 is what everybody else has. So that's an increase, in case you're wondering what they can accrue, but that's pretty standard for police, fire, and non-union. All can accrue up to 240 hours. So that's not necessarily a negative thing going on there.
Question?
We would also be asking for you to read it and adopt it next week, simply because it is a retroactive effective date, and I'd like to get that in place.
Okay.
Sorry.
Mayor, you,
Just
I'm sorry.
a quick comment.
Yes, I'm sorry.
It seems to me that this is a very fair contract for both our employees and the city. And they made some pretty good concessions, I think, in order to get the increased benefits and pay that we've given to them.
Good comment. Okay. Mayor White.
I just want to thank Jim Sands for assisting in the negotiation. And Claudia and Paula, they did a lot of work on this.
Usually, my position would be held by the law director, but because he's engaged in an election, he felt some of his decisions might be misconstrued in a labor negotiation.
But thank you for your work.
Yes, council thanks you all too, very much. Everybody who helped in this negotiation process. Okay, so we'll move forward with an ordinance on that next week, and as I understand, we will need to adopt that, suspend the rules and adopt it so that we can get that moving quickly. The next item concerns the revolving loan fund, and each of you received...
No, that's something different than the packet you have.
Okay.
Do you want me to get into that? I can do that.
The revolving loan fund?
Yes.
Yes. As I understand, we had discussion earlier in the year that perhaps the administration of the revolving loan fund through the Buckeye Development Council based in Marietta that has a good deal of experience with that. But we've had several changes that Mayor Weil can report on to us, and I think positive, in a positive direction.
You probably are aware of the fact Todd Shelton left the Economic Development Council about 3 months ago. Sarah Mars took it over. We did a selection process. I am now chair of the Economic Development Council. She's the director. In the conversations with her, she felt more confident. They've been working with the county's CDBG revolving loan fund. She felt she could probably take it over as well. There's an ordinance that was put forward earlier this year authorizing me to enter into contract with Buckeye Hills Hocking Valley Development District based in Marietta. I would prefer to try scoping it locally, having it administered locally. So therefore, I'm in the process of negotiation with them. It's kind of strange I have the hat on in both cases, but the board will make a decision one way or the other. So I'd like to ask authorization to amend that ordinance to enter into a contract with Economic Development Council. Again, it would give them the tools to use the city revolving loan fund and the county's revolving loan fund in tandem if need be. They do subcontract with Buckeye Hills, Hocking Valley for the financial side of it for the county CDBG revolving loan fund. They'd probably do the same thing to use them as a vetting of any type of revolving loan funds that exist that would come up in our city. So that's really, it's a very small thing, but I do ask for authorization to it since it's a shift from one entity to another. I don't remember the actual ordinance number. I'll get it to you if you wish to amend that and go from there. And that's really all there is to it. The other ones that falls under miscellaneous we'll get to when we get there. Any
other
questions?
Comments or questions? Seems like a logical thing to do if we can, there's confidence in managing it locally and you have confidence in that, you're recommending it. And
Yes.
it allows us to collaborate with the county, so seems like a good
Yes.
move. Next item revolves street light funding, and this is an update. The Director of Public Works and his staff have looked at the bills and realized that the street light and traffic light bills that have been coming in, they're making estimations for monies that will be needed between now and the end of the year. And Mayor Weil, I know, has checked through the information that the staff has provided, and we will be needing to appropriate an additional $20,000
Yes.
to be able to pay those streetlight bills and traffic light
20
bills.
to 25.
Yeah.
I was kind of reading those two different emails, James.
The estimate Terry had, as well as I had, is somewhere in the range of about $19,700. But this is just, if you look at the fund, the bills, transaction for electricity, streetlights, from month to month, it does vary a little bit. So I think we're averaging about $13,000 to $14,000 a month. And we had budgeted, I think, 150, and we've gone through year-to-date 114. It leaves us about a little bit, about 48 left, but we're probably going to need close to 68. And this is just for the street lights. There's also the traffic lights, which are going to be short for about 1,000 or two. So we're asking for additional appropriations to get us through the end of the year.
Questions, Councilmember Reisner?
So this is just to pay the electric bill?
Yes, the street lights.
It's not repair
No.
poles or?
No.
These are our unmetered lights. These are all the street lights you have out there. They give us a bulk rate. So if you see a street light out, shoot it to me or Paula, and we can make sure that it's lit up, because it doesn't matter whether it's on or off, we still get charged the same amount since it's an unmetered system.
Okay, so even though we were without electricity for 9 days, we still get charged for it? I mean, am I reading that right?
I think a lot of street lights were still on.
Not in my neighborhood.
Well, I couldn't say what's going to happen on that. I guess the repair probably costs some. We call the electrician, and they cost money too.
If it's like our water and sewer bills, the base rate is probably, seems like it's about 2/3 of the cost, actually. Yes,
So
Councilmember
That's
Pappy.
kind of my question was, so is the base rate gone up with electric rates going up? Or, I mean, is that,
If I
Is
look
that
at
the
last
fluctuation
year's
here?
budget, and I actually had last year's appropriation, I budgeted about $160,000, about $10,000 more. We hadn't gone through all of it at the time, so I backed it off about $10,000 to make the budget look better. In other words, what happens that, and realize, we're going to start the budget process quite soon here. I look at the revised appropriation that I get out and the revenue, and then I look at how much is spent. Really, most of the time, I'm looking at the 3/4 mark, the September mark at that point, and say, okay, so let's add another quarter to it. If it doesn't look like it's going to all be spent out, then I want to have the budget look closer to reality, I'll taper back on it. As a result, I dropped it down to 160. I think the electricity has gone up. I didn't see a big trend on it because it goes up and down a little bit, and there are actually a couple of different counts it comes out of. So we do need to budget more. We could probably, in theory, we could probably move things around the TC 200s and 300s, but rather than not do that, because they're all kind of tight as well. We wrote a pretty tight budget last year for this year. I'd rather have the appropriation. If it doesn't get used, it goes back into the pool. I also mentioned that and it should be another thing in miscellaneous, is the community center and the recreation is also short electricity. Rich Campitelli's been bringing that up quite regularly. He's short funds on that.
We actually, last week, council adopted additional funds in their...
Is that enough?
For
supplies.
supplies.
Okay.
So we'll check on that.
Okay.
Okay.
But, so I'm hearing that we should probably do it slightly above 20,000, as you say, if the money's not used at the end of the year, then it can go back.
Yeah.
So would you be more comfortable with, why don't we say somewhere between 20 and 25, you want to say $23,000?
23 would do for the streetlights. I think...
We will check back with the community center, because I believe it was just this morning at staff that Rich stated he was looking
Okay.
closely at his electric.
So it might be revised
So-
upward slightly if the community center needs
Well,
more.
that's a
That'd be
different fund.
Or a different fund, okay.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions about that? Yeah.
Just a follow-up to the issue that was raised over here. The last time I drove in Jeff's neighborhood after dark, it was really dark. How about, what do we do about getting streetlights?
More streetlights.
Getting more streetlights, how do we do that? Tape for them, probably.
Oh, they'll place them. We'll
And
pay
charge
for
them.
them.
How much
yes.
does it cost off the top of your head for a new street light? I just kind of wonder,
I don't know.
because there are some really dark parts of town, there's no doubt, but that would be an interesting...
I think Councilmember Patterson's been talking about taking a safety tour soon, right?
This is a good moment to interject.
I didn't know that we were going to Jeff's neighborhood.
Well, we're open to neighborhoods. Is it okay that I mention this? Is that basically the JPAC will be holding its October 4th meeting in a bus, hopefully, driving around through the city looking at safety. It's kind of the same thing as the street tour, looking for street repairs, but kind of flipping that around and looking for potential hot spots throughout the city that may need some extra lighting. If lighting is an issue to where we could put lighting in, it'll certainly be suggested during this meeting. And the meeting will actually take place on the bus as well, so there'll be a functional meeting going on as we're driving around through the neighborhoods. The citizens are welcome to give input. You can go to the JPAC website and say, please go down such and such a street within Athens, and we will try to put that on the schedule. OU, since it is JPAC joint, we put the word out to the students, for the students to also give us their input for areas outside. OU does its own safety walk every year to where they go around looking at hotspots, dangerous areas, poorly lit areas within the campus confines, to the boundaries of the campus. But for those who live off campus, which is a large number of them, we open that up to off-campus housing to point out areas of concern.
We're still determining time and gathering location.
I have one comment to that.
Yes.
Just as a follow-up. There's a huge difference between leaves on and leaves off of trees
Yes.
and your safety. So just,
With lighting.
Good point.
And I'm aware of the fact, there was a map that was, that I was looking at a couple of years ago with the various street lights listed. There are different wattages, so therefore the cost of the lights vary from light type to light type. I think the last light we put in was on Jeff Hill. We could probably try backtracking with AEP and find out what the cost of that was.
That'd be a
There's
good
both
idea.
the electrical and then installation, so that, I don't know if they get those numbers together, and I say that's last year's numbers, I think.
and I know, speaking with Andy, if there's already a pole that exists, that's already there, sometimes you can add a light to an existing, depending on the technical aspects of that, but sometimes that's a
But
possibility.
realize, it works two ways. I've had people, I've knocked on people's doors where they'd like the light to be removed from their yard, or their corner, literally. I had one on the corner of
We know where
Elizabeth
they
and
go.
Second there saying, please, I hate that light, can you get rid of it? Or don't fix it, please, when it's broken.
Well, while we're looking at that, the other thing that I'd like to ask, and I know this was when the bypass went in, and down at the South Y, Pomeroy and Richland Avenue, and that there were some individual residences down there that were affected. And I know that I have heard that the companies do make lights that have directional shields on them, so that if you're trying to shine out onto the ramp on the highway, you can block the backside so that it's not shining in someone's bedroom window, which is exactly what happened. The person was never able to open their, bedroom window at night anymore because they had to keep the shades drawn and the curtains pulled. So, if we do put some lights in, we might ask about that feature too.
That feature might also work well with light pollution, which is obviously an issue.
Down.
And that's in the code already, good lighting.
Right.
But I'm happy, I want to thank you for bringing up the issue with leaves, and hopefully, unless we have a great freeze over the next
Right.
couple of weeks,
That'll give you a good-
so the tour timing, maybe just right.
Yeah, I had received an email from a West Sider that was concerned about whether or not lighting would be placed on the new pole at the corner of Walker and,
Walker and Miller?
correct, thank you.
I believe so, but I can get
Okay.
that checked on you.
I think,
And tell you the truth, this is off the financing.
Sure.
Okay.
all-
We're trying to get money to finish out the lights we have.
Yep.
Sorry to...
Well, that was a nice blend between service safety and finance, so here we go. But back to finance issues. If there aren't any more comments about street lighting, money needed for the budget between now and the end of the year, we'll go on to city building, the maintenance, and cupola repair.
You want to cover that?
What can I say? The roof is leaking into the council clerk's office, and so we need to address this. Finding the money is another story, but I'm looking at what could be up to a $30,000 needed money, and a little bit more. I would deem this an emergency, the fact that it's already leaked into the council clerk's office, which is, and the degradation is just continuing and ongoing. So we have a proposal from Bruiser Builders. We'd like to bring that forth under emergency. And there's been a lot of discussion recently about trying to maintain the integrity of the architecture, so we're looking at that.
That was my question, is...
We did determine, that it's on the National Historic Register, and we should try and keep it as looking the same as it has been, paying attention to that.
I also have, if I may, under miscellaneous, a request for painting of the Mansfield House Tourism Building, and that's just under $4,000. And parking garage steps and elevator cars, and personally, the elevator cars really need repainted if you've been in one recently. That fund is healthy, I'm asking for additional appropriation. I'd have to defer to the auditor on where we find the money for the visitor center.
We'll have to figure it out.
So that's the Mansfield House and the parking garage, elevators, and stairs.
And
Steps as well.
Steps.
Inside the
And
rest.
I think the more we can keep that in better shape, I think the better people will take care of it, and it will
And
be
power
also...
wash.
And power wash. It
Well, we've held
takes a
off the
certain
power
amount of...
washing this time.
Disinfected.
Why did we do that? I forget.
he felt that we normally do it 3 times a year, and we cut it down to, just like everybody else, cutting a little bit of services, and we cut it down to twice a year.
We
So
went from quarter semesters and power washing.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. We have the Assessment Equalization Board. Council members did receive today the full report of the Equalization Board members, and I'd like to thank Clerk of Council Walker, and also then from the City Prosecutor's Office, or City Law Director's Office, Ms. Eliason, and then also our 3 citizen volunteers who, Joe McLaughlin, Dave DeScutner, who served as the chair of the group, and then Laura Luther. And they went out and checked out the sites ahead of time, looked at the photographs. Our Public Works Director, Andy Stone, of course, was there with his array of photographs, maps, and information, and did a good job. But I'd like to thank everybody involved. They reviewed 4 properties, and the recommendations of the Equalization Board you have in that report, so we'll bring that forth as an ordinance for council to approve.
Service Safety Director, do you know how many properties were involved?
16?
We had
There are over 60 in the North Court Infrastructure Improvement Project that included the areas of State Street and down to Morris, and then 30-odd on Grosvenor, I believe.
Oh,
And we
okay.
had a total of 4 protests. Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Did this include Morris Avenue?
It did.
I think there was one on Morris who contested it.
And I believe when we get to segue into Columbus Road, Lancaster, we're going to be looking at sidewalk improvements on that project, too. It seems to be working. The model seems to be working.
Okay. As a miscellaneous item, I know we have the CGI.
CGI.
Yes.
Essentially, I gave you packets to look at. I really don't want to discuss it too much right now because you have to look at all of it. This is the company that's coming in. It's about 150 jobs, mostly IT related. What you're seeing there is that we've been kind of dancing with them for almost 2 years, a little bit under a year, 2 years. Some of you I talked to one-on-one, previous council. At that time, they were talking about 300 jobs. The state has offered a income tax credit. The state can do that. We agreed to mirror what the state was talking about, which is approximately a 60% abatement on the employees coming out of the business tax side of it. Correct me if I say anything wrong, Kathy.
Well, it's a 60% of their net payroll credit towards their business tax.
For 6 years, we're going to be putting into the, really what I need is authorization to finish up this negotiation. The state has limited, the state requirements say they have to pay, the jobs have to average out to be about $20.19 an hour. So these are not low-paying jobs by any definition. They will ramp up to 150 over several years. How fast they do it depends on how much they will get back as credit. Let's see what else. We will put a clawback in there. The issue is to make sure that they stay after the abatement is done. But essentially,
10
it is
years.
what?
Up to 10 years.
Up to 10 years.
After that, if they sell or leave, then they have to pay that all back. If they do it in less than 10 years.
Yes. And the law director is working on the draft of this. He's going to make sure it's pretty much without loopholes. I think if you read the cover letter there, Sarah Mars, the director of EDC, is Economic Development Council, has pretty much laid out most of it right there. Again, the original attraction was to get it to here. When they first started talking about it, they had 2 other sites in Ohio. And therefore the state could not make any better than just regular state stuff. You can't compete from one to the other. So we had to add a little bit to it. There are other parts in play as well. We're just a portion of it. Some of it has to do with the actual building site. Some of it has to do with workforce training, as well as Ohio University is involved in it in terms of curriculum changes to make sure the workforce is ready. Tri-County is involved in it to create a training center. So there are a lot of pieces involved in it. What I'd like to do is get authorization to complete this, to make that contract and to make that agreement. And I think I've covered everything. And again, this is just, the faster the better. The actual deal will be a back and forth, but I need authorization.
I just want to reinforce what the mayor said, that he and I had met with Sarah Mars last Wednesday, and then we included the law director on Friday. I had some issues with the draft that had come out actually a while ago. This has kind of been hanging out there for about 2 years, I think. But anyway, we discussed it. I had our tax administrator look at it, and we cleaned up the language, and so that we're not cutting a check to them when they're not paying their full taxes to begin with. And I'm pretty satisfied with what we've worked out, and as far as that goes. So, but it also it is very important that they get this tax credit for them to come, as a new business to get established
Councilmember Reisner.
Where are they physically going to be located?
They're negotiating with the, Tech Park on East State Street, the old McBee plant.
Hauser? I don't know. way that land is laid out, is there sort of like it goes in the city and then out into the county?
It's all in the city.
All within the city?
That's all in the city.
Okay.
The portion you're talking about is, and that would probably come under planning development, is the annexation of the old Columbia Gas, which is to the east of that.
Right,
But they are all in the city.
okay.
And again, there's room in there, as I said, that's part of the negotiation, that there's cost per square foot. That's not our negotiation, that's with the companies involved. But again, this is we've got the state involved in it, we've got, the county involved in it, we've got the Economic Development Council, as well as, everybody from the developers. And again, these are IT jobs, these are going to be good jobs,
I just want to point out on this, I think it was the last page in there, this is really an example of what the credit might be and how many jobs and their average payroll. It doesn't say example on there. I think the one we were looking at the other day did, but just so you know, it gives you an idea of what their credit might be with 50 jobs and at the $20 an hour, which is what they expect to serve.
It's about
They're required to do it on
$42,000
the
a
state
year.
level.
Well,
What?
32, and then their credit would be 20,000. And then it would change depending on how many jobs they have. And as the mayor said, they started out talking about 300 jobs, and it could very well grow to that. But 150 jobs is a lot of jobs for anybody in Athens besides the university. So would be a really nice thing for us if we can move it along and help them come here.
So the hope is to put an ordinance together to authorize me into the negotiation and approve it. Go ahead.
Just one last question. Will the city be responsible for the installation or maintenance of any other infrastructure other than normally for any other business?
No, it's anything else that moves into that tech park would be the same thing. Okay. And again, the assumption is they'll ramp up at a certain speed. We don't know what speed that will be.
Well, it's good to know that the agreement's been vetted by you, Kathy, as auditor, and the law director as well, and also looked at and reviewed by
Oh, yes.
the Economic Development Council. So.
Sorry, I was getting notes here. One of the other package things, of course, is that we were going to give them the employees' membership to the Athens Community Center for, I think, 6 years maybe.
I'm sorry, I have not seen that.
Okay. No, that's not an important thing, package, part of the package. We're basically putting everything we could throw in it to get them here. Again, if you look at it, it's to the employees and not to the entire family, so it will get people in there. We have business agreements with other organizations, probably not as sweet as this, but at the same time. The way I understand it, too, is that this is not something we can just give out easily. It has to be something in conjunction with whatever the state negotiates as well.
That's important for people to
Yeah, it's
know.
not any company come through and say, give me an abatement. They actually have to be, have an agreement with the state for this, the jobs will hire to do this. And again, this was, you probably saw this in the paper, but this was a package of about maybe a half a dozen or a dozen other tax credits that were given throughout the state for other businesses. Again, the Jobs Ohio has finally got something rolling, so it seems to be pulling out something. And any other questions?
I have a question, I have a comment, though. I mean, with the membership at the community center, I'm hoping that gets tracked in terms of its use by individuals that are employed there, but on the other hand, I appreciate the fact that there is an exercise venue, especially in the IT field, because I can tell you firsthand that IT field is one of those fields where stress-related illnesses is
And way too much
high.
sitting.
Can be high.
Yeah.
I think you should have pushed it a little bit further and said, we will get you rental bikes and use the bike path to get to the community center as well. But regardless, I like that concept. I really do. Not the bicycle part, but.
We don't know, I don't know what the culture is of the company. The discussions I had with the company is that they really are aiming at a workforce that wants to be in Athens, and they want a skilled workforce.
Because of our art.
That as well?
Many
That's
things.
part of it.
Well,
This
creativity.
segues right into that
It
whole,
does.
Okay.
that whole culture and it builds on itself.
That reminds me, and I meant to say it earlier, Arts West needs some money for repairs. I meant to say when they were still here.
That was very
I was supposed to
smooth.
get it from Rich. He indicated it'd be around $10,000, $5,000 for some floor replacement from damage from water that got into the building, and $5,000 to $6,000 for another repair, so I'll get you the details.
If we can have the
sometime, so-
details of that, certainly
Yes.
we don't want to neglect that building,
Right.
but we would want to know the details of it
Okay.
before we proceed. If I'm sensing from the questions and comments here, I think that we have consensus that the council would be in agreement to move forward to authorize this agreement with,
Okay.
to
So I
encourage
really just need-
CGI to come here, so we could move an ordinance forward quickly to...
Okay.
Okay.
And if you have any questions, talk to me or talk to Sarah. Okay. Or
Any
Kathy
other-
if need be.
Any other finance and personnel-related issues for the committee?
No, I think that's enough.
Every week, yes.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Going to move right along to the Transportation Committee, chaired by Elihu Ghazni.
Thank you. A few items tonight. One is, the first one is the Columbus Road, Lancaster Street Improvement Project. This is, of course, one of the major gateways into the city, and we discussed at our last council meeting
Like this one here?
an application that the city has for state funds, Issue 1, so-called Issue 1 funds, to complete this renovation project that would include paving, restriping, sidewalks, some stormwater infrastructure. And in order to have a competitive application, we need to complete some surveying. And so we will have to have an ordinance that will authorize surveying and some sort of preliminary design work for this project. And the estimate is up to $60,000. This would come out of the street and the sewer, and water funds. So it's really a joint project that covers all of those funds. And just a reminder that this project also has some CDBG money that we generally receive every year for these types of major infrastructure improvements. Do we have anything to add to the Lancaster Street other than the money needed for surveying and some preliminary design work?
I believe that's it. Thank you.
Any questions on this?
Just to clarify, when you're talking about surveying, it's with transits and stuff, not a survey like this guy was talking about.
Correct. Yeah.
I thought so.
Engineering survey.
I thought so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Member Butler.
Thank you, Member Ghazni. I'd just like to be on record to say that I believe that this area is in desperate need of improvements and enhancement, and feel that we have a real opportunity here to beautify the area as well, perhaps thinking outside the block with a double strip or the safety zone between the sidewalk and the street. There's a lot of cars traversing up and down the hill that often are traveling quickly, and a lot of pedestrians are using the sidewalks as well, going up and down North Lancaster. So I think there's a real chance for us to beautify, maybe even put in a meridian strip in the middle with trees or bushes or things, again, to beautify. We are Tree City, USA. I'm just acknowledging my vision for the engineering process and design.
Thank you.
I would add that too, as well as that intersection at Mound in Lancaster and Carpenter there. That's at the very base of what will be engineered
end.
there. But also, this is a major entrance into our city,
Right.
and it's been neglected for a very long time. And
Well-
I would say it's the final entrance that really, I mean, Richland is going to be worked on, but it definitely needs that help.
One thing I'd just like to point out is Columbus Road is a longer stretch than you might think when you're driving it, and it's very expensive. It's going to be very expensive just to pave that. Those water and sewer lines are fairly new out there. They put that pump station in out there. So the water and sewer lines are okay, but it's a pretty long strip and very expensive to pave. So right there, that delays that. Of course, as Kent and I know, we live on that side of town, that North Lancaster is really, really bad. And that will probably need some water and sewer improvement from 2nd Street down. So it's an expensive project. That's why some things get put off around the city. Believe me, I get as frustrated as everyone else driving around thinking, when are they going to do this? But everything costs money, so.
Sure, and I was referring to the North Lancaster area as requiring enhancement with sidewalks and beautification for an entranceway into the community and the city.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, Columbus Road will probably just get the overlay
Right,
with the lanes.
exactly.
I mean,
And I
I know that we'd all
completely
like
understand
to
that.
have the sidewalks all the way down, but.
That's why I
that had to be
clarified.
future.
That was,
We will do assessments on the sidewalks?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so part of the process will be the assessment process that you just went through for the other areas.
From Second Street down. Yeah,
Correct.
yeah.
Okay, let's move right on to the next item, and that is our Safe Routes to Schools grant. This is for, to remind everyone, this Safe Routes to Schools was for new sidewalks for Miller Street, as well as, I believe, Shannon Avenue also. And this has been stalled because the construction costs came in above what our grant funds were, and we've just received word, I believe today, from the state of Ohio that they have increased our grant to help cover those costs. And so we will be able to proceed with this thanks to the Ohio Department of Transportation increasing that for us. And this is a relatively large project. We need to increase the appropriation by $33,961 in order to cover this increased cost. Paula, do you know if that is entirely the increase in the grant amount, or is part of that our share?
No, he indicates
increase.
that's separate from the 28,000 of local money that we've expended.
Okay.
And he is deferring to the auditor to see about which fund would be most appropriate to have that increase in, but we'd like to ask to have that up next Monday also.
Right.
But this is 100% refundable
Reimbursed.
grant, reimbursed grant, so it's like we're outlaying the initial and then we'll get reimbursed.
We do have some of our own
There's
design money
a
and
little
other.
of ours.
Little,
Yeah.
but
Sure.
it's mostly being covered.
project.
It's just that
Yeah.
we're kind of covering it until it gets covered by somebody else.
And this will need, we will need to rush this quickly to make sure that we can get this project completed and get those sidewalks built. The third item that we have is, again, a grant-related item, and this was for some energy efficiency improvements that were completed at the wastewater treatment plant to the tune of $362,000. And the city, I believe, did we take a loan to cover this amount in the beginning?
We did. We borrowed
And-
$500,000.
And so this was a reimbursable grant situation, like we were just discussing, where we had to do the outlay of the expenses, and this was actually stimulus money, is that right? This is stimulus money that the city received. So the work's completed, we're ready to receive that money. Actually, we've received it, so we need to make sure that we can use that money in order to help pay off that loan that we took out to cover the costs.
We need to appropriate it and then pay it down, right? Okay.
Right. We're getting $362,000 back, so the $140,000, $138,000 will come out of our funds, but the money is there. We knew it was coming, and the loan is due December 13th, so we're going to go ahead and pay it as soon as we can. I think everybody's in agreement with that. That was the intention, I think, when we took the loan out a year ago.
And then these improvements were designed, we all know that we have some very big upgrades coming to that treatment plant, but these were designed to sort of kick those off and to be lasting improvements that would help us get the next level of the renovation started. Any questions on any of those items?
I just would like to say the air conditioning works just brilliantly down there now, so that's part of that EECDG.
Excellent. Anything, any other miscellaneous for transportation this evening? All right, thank you.
Chris Fall, President of the Planning and Development Committee, has some issues to talk about.
First, I want to have Paula talk about property acquisition, kind of, I would call an orphaned piece of property down on Columbus Avenue. That's within our wellhead protection zone. Can you explain the project?
Okay. 83 Columbus Road, the former Bilo or gas station. They went to sheriff's sale twice. No one bid on it, and then the judge ordered it ordered an offer to the city on whether or not we would be interested in taking that. I've provided you with some background information and all the information to date. We have done Tier 1 investigation on the property. that has come back with acceptable levels in the soils. We've verified with the company that we had come in that there is no product left in the tank. The tanks are there in place. This property is under a notice of violation for failing to meet Buster's requirements and not registering them and not having that updated on a regular basis. The Wellhead Protection Team has reviewed this. The Wellhead Protection Team as a whole, and as I'm a member, support the acquisition of this property. I feel like we're going into it with eyes wide open. We know there's an existing violation. We know that if we take the property, we accept that violation, and then we'll be under orders to have the tanks removed, which we would want to do anyway. Is there a possibility that we'll find some chemical or contamination? Could be, but based on the Tier 1, if you've had a chance to evaluate that, we still feel greater than, of course, hope springs eternal. Above 75%, some of us feel closer to 95% that we'll be able to have them removed. There will be additional costs. The buildings there do need to be taken down. We've talked about the possibility of using that for a future park and ride with the Columbus Road Bypass Spur that will be coming in hopefully around Columbus Circle, or whatever other municipal use that someone may feel is there. And we're up against a time frame that the court has held it for us through the summer while we make these deliberations and do this research in order to be able to report back to you.
What happens to the property if we don't take it now?
Once again, we feel that they will then go back to the state, and it will be on the long list of remediation that we're being told that we're not high priority, and it could be years. We feel that it's sat there for years in its present state, and nothing will really occur. It'll continue to look like that and still sit there. So.
Can I read something from Ray Hazlett, Deputy Auditor, who has been out for 2 months and returned today? Of course, I sent him this for his opinion, since he has worked with the city longer than any of us, and he was right at the forefront of the wreck foreclosure that we dealt with from East State Street. Kathy, I firmly believe the purchase of this property prior to a final removal and clean closure by the current owner is a huge error in judgment. For example, during the East State Street widening, our contractor encountered petroleum fumes in the soils under the old pavement and in the right-of-way in front of the old Clark Station site across from Walmart. Fortunately, I was able to contact the environmental attorney for the owners. I think it was Ashland Oil. The owners were responsible for transport and disposal of the contaminated soils. They already had long-term site monitoring in place due to the tank removal, so the additional costs were covered by an existing reserve for site liabilities. My thought is we should continue to cooperate with Buster in their pursuit of remediation. After the site is closed and receives a clean NFA, we might want to consider purchase. I don't know if any of you were around and remember all that, but that old gas station there, I thought it was a certified, but was cleared out years before that. It's not been there, and sure enough, the contractor, Shelley and Sands, were down there doing the widening, and fumes where they were digging, they thought it was going to blow up, and you just don't know what you're going to run into down the line. I mean, you might remove the tanks and think it's okay there, but, you know, I'm just worried about the money. It's not that I don't agree with, you know, it would be wonderful if we could go around town and buy every site that's an eyesore and that we think might have an issue with, but I just think that this is a perfect example of additional money costs down the line. So that's, I'm in agreement with Ray on that. We're just putting it out there.
I have a question about how quickly we would need to remove the tanks and demolish the building, because I'm wondering if grant funds might be a possibility.
I know of no grant funds for the removal of the tanks, and we would need to do that right away as owner, because we would not accept and live with that notice of violation in place. I believe if the owner's not deceased, he's, you know, no longer engaged in any sort of assurance. He has the number of places within the state. He has multiple violations under Buster. So we feel again that we felt that the sampling that we've got has given us a pretty good idea of what's in place there. And there isn't a cost in terms of acquiring it, my understanding, other than what would be the real estate, but it's the future cost for the removal. And I believe you have those quotes in your packets that show that it's somewhere around the $32,000 range.
Do we know how much the cleanup of the soil on the East State Street widening cost that other? I realize it didn't cost the city, but
Right, it wasn't the city. No, I don't know. I mean, Ray just came back today and responded to this and remembered that station had been closed for years, and then when they were widening, it was a pretty big issue down there, of all the dirt that had to be removed and disposed of properly,
and if we encountered contaminated soil, would we be under the same time restrictions to address that immediately, or would we have some time? I know we'd have to clean it before we could build on it.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe you know more about timeframes. Once you report an issue to the EPA,
I
what
would
kind of-
contend we'd have to address it
Immediately.
We're taking this with eyes wide open and possible risks.
The alternative is not to pay attention to it and hope it doesn't do anything untoward to our wellhead protection area. It is in the 100-year, it is in the 1-year perk range. The Wellhead Protection Committee's been aware of it, and that's their recommendation in that sense, is to deal with it rather than not deal with it. So there are unknowns. You've got the reports. You look at it. They've done a lot of drillings around the periphery. They've done various depths of it. It looks pretty solid, but again, you don't know until you get in there.
So we've already spent about $15,000, $32,000 that we know to remove the tanks, $10,000 to tear down the building, clean up the site, so about $60,000 right off the bat, and that's assuming we don't run into any issues.
And again, if we feel it's not something suitable, we have cleaned it up and to put it back into the real estate market too. If we cleaned it up, we can always take whatever it cost us and put it out to sale as a commercial lot. I mean, if we don't want to keep it ourselves as property.
And the sense is that's why it hasn't sold at sheriff's sale.
So it
Everyone else
could
is
be.
willing to take that on. So.
And would there be restrictions on what kind of businesses could be operated there?
Yes.
They
The
have to
wellhead
comply with the wellhead protection
Yes.
ordinances and regulations.
So it would not be a gas station again?
Correct.
Mhm.
And I doubt if Curtis could buy it and expand their
No, it cannot be a
business.
service. That's
So,
grandfathered.
yeah,
It's
Curtis
all
Towing right
service,
next
so.
door could not buy it and just expand their business. That would not be allowed either, so.
Well, we fully anticipate having a nice new road there soon, so who knows?
So we do know, we've all read the Tier 1 report. We do know that there have been, samples taken and all those kinds of things. So it's not like we're operating totally in the dark. It seems like the situation that Ray's referring to from many years ago, I mean, it was a pretty bad situation that they got into pretty quickly. So there has been...
Well, they had already, what happened there is those tanks had been removed years before that. And then when they went to widen and started digging in the ground, this had seeped out, more than they thought, which, could be part of your argument in the wellhead protection zone, but I just think you need to be aware of the possible costs involved. Yeah, this wasn't where they just went in there and took out the tanks and found it. They thought they were done, they'd removed the tanks, and then,
But they
realized.
didn't do a Tier 1. I mean, one thing is that you can go in and remove tanks and not do any soil
Drilling or
assessment.
Oh, they had to do that back then, too.
But
They did have to do that. Gas tanks are monitored by, this is the other issue with gas stations already in the wellhead protection zone, is they're monitored by the state fire marshals. So, there's really very little that we do when people put in have a gas station. They've got their secondary confinement and everything else. So it absolutely was monitored. It's not like they just went in and took out the tanks and nobody cared if the soil was contaminated. They thought they were done, but this had moved farther out to where they started digging, and they didn't realize it.
Are these fiberglass tanks, were these tanks already
Oh, I
replaced at
know
one
that
point?
answer, I can't
I
remember.
thought we discussed that at one point.
Yeah, we talked about
We
it.
said that, I think they were.
It's that they've already been replaced once.
Yes, they had been.
So they're not old
No.
creaky
No, no.
galvanized tin drums sitting there.
And Chief Troxel did issue a notice of non-compliance on the underground storage tanks in 2007. So, could look a little bit further.
Was it still operating in 2007? It had already...
No, that was the reason he received that.
Ceased operation.
I think that, I mean, the two main things have already been touched on, but this is in close proximity to the city's water supply. We've done due diligence to the best that we can without actually removing the tanks to make sure that the site is relatively clean in terms of any possible contamination. And we're being given a chance to take this property at some cost to the city in terms of cleanup and remove what's been a serious blight on the city. I know there are several in different places, but this is one we're given a chance to just take and make improvements to. I think that we should do that. We should make that improvement. There, as we discussed, there is some chance that there could be contamination from who knows how many years ago, but we did a very serious soil testing. How many? There were 25 soil samples.
I think it was 25. I thought there was like 15.
15 maybe. Quite a few different samples around where these wells or these storage tanks are located.
16 borings, I'm sorry.
16. And
Site general
nothing's foolproof
Right
until we
here.
get the tanks out of the ground. But even if there is some sort of contamination there, should we just sit here blindly without knowing while the property sits for more years, however many more years it would take? Or should we take the chance, get rid of those tanks, and make sure that it's a clean site? I think we should.
I would add one other thing. It's possible that administratively, if that site was cleaned up and the city chose to clean up the site, what would be the real estate value once that it was
That's
cleaned
what I
up?
think
That
so,
would
too.
be a good number or a figure to be able to tell the public as well, just to have an idea. What would that site, what would
Good
that-
question. Don't know what it would be.
It might be nice to know that.
Especially with our new road, with our much better road. So,
Okay. Steve?
I probably should have done my homework on this. I don't recall how old the actual station is, but it seems to me that one of the numbers that was kicked around was something like the early 90s in which the tanks were replaced.
Yeah.
So therefore, going on what Auditor Hecht was just telling us, that with the other station out on East State Street, if there was testing that was done after the tanks were removed, is it possible this might be another safety guard for the city in this acquisition? If there are any records out there from when the tanks were replaced in the early 90s, is there any record of what the soil sample looked underneath when they pulled the tanks and put new tanks in? I do believe these were fiberglass tanks, by the way. I think they were, like I said, early 90s tanks that are currently empty of fuel. There's nothing inside them. However, the answer may be in that. We may, if we can look at old samples, old testing that was done.
I would assume that if there was a problem then, they would have dealt with it. Okay? But I don't know.
That's where I'm going with this,
Okay.
is that there could be an answer in what may have been done back in 1990.
Okay.
I'd be happy to look into it, see if there's any record of
I think
that.
it would be wise.
And thank you for considering.
Any more questions? Okay.
we can put this on.
Yeah, can you answer the questions over the next few days?
Uh-huh. I'll send an email to City
Email us, and then
Council.
we will bring it up on Monday. So, you get the idea, it seems like something that people, eyes wide open, want to go forward with. Second agenda item is severance tax. This I brought up in late spring, was the idea of establishing a state as citywide natural resource severance tax, to put a tax for a mitigation and monitoring program on such things as oil and gas extraction within the city. And I presented that. I gave all the information to the law director's office, and it came back that the Ohio Revised Code won't let us do it. So That's a no-go on establishing that way for our oil and gas and natural resources monitoring and mitigation fund. So we are looking at other options on this project, the Endless project. I am frustrated that seems that the legislature and the administration that talks so much about local control has tied the hands of local control when it comes to, monitoring, permitting, locating of these resource extraction that potentially can have a huge impact on, our water and air quality in the city. And it's just fully frustrating because I find it very hypocritical. But I will.
Well, it is, and if anybody wants to do anything about it, the governor's talking about increasing their revenue for this, and.
Right. But that would not go locally. That's the thing.
That's what I know.
It's they want to maybe bring out more severance, increase taxes on this extraction, but they're talking about not putting it into the communities that are being impacted the most by this process.
They're talking about a
They're
tax.
talking about a minuscule, tiny little income tax reduction. And so, which is really unfortunate because we're going to be nailed if anything, any sort of mitigation. And I don't hear from the state that they're establishing mitigation funds like they did with we're getting our rock removed because they established a reclamation and mitigation fund way back then about that sort of.
For coal mining.
Yeah, for coal mining, but they're not talking about it. So to do due diligence and protection of health and safety for the citizens of Athens, I'm looking at different processes. So I'm bummed, but that's the way the legislation works. So I will try to bring up something else in the near future.
We could mention one thing, Chris, is that many communities are going to ballot initiatives in regards to this, even though that is up against, again, the state ordinances as they currently exist. But the ORC, many communities are going that out of sheer frustration from what we're discussing right now. You saw in the newspapers over the summer where Cincinnati just out and out banned it, which is standing right up against the state, the legislature. So,
Yes.
I mean, some communities are going that route just out of pure frustration.
There'll be more, I promise. So, next item on our agenda is vending to amend the Athens City Code. And Steve Patterson has been working on this.
Thank you, Member Fall. Last, if not least, as long as there's no miscellaneous, and for those of you in TV land who are still awake, a little bit of history behind this particular ordinance. A business owner came to us and presented in chambers talking about the vending, peddling, and soliciting code as it exists, which is City Code 11.04, which is vending, peddling, and soliciting, which falls under the Chapter 11, which is businesses. And it raised the question as to whether vending in and of itself afforded an individual to set up business or to acquire a permit to purchase items, such as books. So in doing a little bit further digging, we found that there does need to be some clarification to the Athens City Code when it comes to 11.04.02, which is definitions, and basically clarifying the definition of vend, and the definition of vendor to include, as the current ordinance reads, or it is, vend is to sell legal goods or wares from vehicle stands, carts, machines, or wagons approved by the city. What will be included is essentially, not purchase items, because purchasing doesn't fall under the definition of vending. And vendor will also change as well, the definition to where it is a person who sells, not purchases, legal goods and wares from approved vehicle stands, carts, machines, again, or wagons. That's under the definition. There will also be a change within the ordinance under the licensing procedures, which currently lists items A through F, which is, again, just clarifying the licenses themselves. This will add another item or another item. It'll be item G, which basically states vending permits shall not be used for the purchase, for the purpose of purchasing goods or wares within the city boundaries. Again, which fits with the language that exists out there for other codes.
Councilman Patterson, I've also been fielding from the Uptown Business Association some requests for relocation of the A vendors. Where they are now, the impacts that they feel that they're having, that this is primarily the corner of Union and Court, and requesting that they be relocated to basically in front of the green there, the opposite side where B vendors. So I just wondered if this was a time to look at it a little bit more comprehensively, or at least consider that. So.
Certainly could be, sure.
I also heard the same concerns, and I was going to raise my hand.
So have I.
And there was also that concern of the one on the far end of the street down here on, if we all recall, State Street, in the parking lot of a business, the vendor.
Is that
And there
under
have
the
been
same
some
thing, or is that under
concerns.
peddlers?
I think that's under peddlers or something. That's on a private area.
Well, that's the issue, I believe, is it is a private property that's rented out to somebody. It does fit, though, under the vending, which is interesting. But the vending permits themselves are purchased in order to have guaranteed spaces in the A's, A permit areas for sites along the curb, again, on the north side.
West
That's correct.
Union, yeah.
Of West Union. And the B permits are across the street. There are 10 B permit spaces, that I do know, but it is well worth looking into the reallocation, possibly.
Possibly, and also looking at, the numbers, what is being really utilized, and what is the number that we need for Bs or whatever.
Okay.
And I know we mentioned the parking lot, but does that mean I can rent out a space to somebody with an RV? I mean, I don't know. So I just think pulling that.
Not at your home probably, but if you have an uptown business or someplace that's
And a
in a
parking lot.
business, yeah, with a parking lot.
And get a peddler's license.
But they'd have to have a license.
Yes.
Yeah, those are $25 a month. Appointed by months and months, or could be purchased.
How does this impact, if you have to have so many spaces for your business, and you have part of those parking spaces rented out on a continual basis, then that reduces the amount of parking that's supposed to be for your...
Most of it's probably in the B2D that's utilizing a parking garage, but I'm not sure.
I mean, that's an issue. I mean,
Or they're grandfathered in. Most of the businesses uptown have been there, for one thing. And this happens, it's not just that one corner, but the BP has had a hot dog vendor, down there for several years off and on, and it's the same kind of thing, private property.
What's the concern specifically with the location of the A vendors?
The noise and the trash, essentially. What is the reality? We might have come out of a tavern and we get the piece of food item and the drippings just fall, and that's kind of landed on that responsible property owner or business entrepreneur who actually is kind of tracking that. So.
And then we cite them for litter.
That's fair.
Sounds like a nuisance party to me.
I don't know about that.
On that note,
It's time to go.
so I think that, can you look into these issues
Absolutely.
and bring it back to the next committee meeting? Miscellaneous, I have one thing. I would like to remind people that I'm getting together names for the Environmental and Sustainability Commission. If you're interested, if you can send a letter of interest, maybe with a little background, your interests or your background in environmental and sustainability issues to either myself or to Debbie Walker, and I will be getting together a meeting. I see 7 people being on this commission to start with. I can't see that. What do you do?
I was showing it to Jim.
Oh, okay. So please do that. I'm hoping to have a meeting within, the next 6 weeks, depending on how we can doodle everybody together. So, Michelle has some miscellaneous? What?
Go ahead. You were speaking to the TV audience, weren't you? Asking for, not to us.
No, I was talking to everybody out there.
Yeah.
Also, this will be on the website when I get it written up and a little memo of it, so. Okay.
As many of you know, the Wayne National Forest did agree to open up to oil and gas development with the Bureau of Land Management. We have a deadline of midnight tonight. Back in October, before I was on council, I sent many of you an email that I believe that you saw. You sent the letter in October of last year citing concerns. I would suggest that we tonight quickly sign something and resubmit our same concerns. If we can get that together, we felt like we needed to bring it up to you tonight. So if you all are in agreement with that, I don't need to go into the details of that. You all know. Now, several members weren't here when that resolution letter was sent out last October. I know I wasn't, but I believe we're even more understanding and up to date on what the concerns are to our water situation. But we felt that I believe that it's important that we again make a statement to BLM of our concerns with them opening up just north of here. Hydraulic fracturing. So.
Okay. I have a couple of miscellaneous actually.
Well, you were going like this.
That's Jim.
That's for Jim.
What Paula was waving is a communication we've had from the commissioners regarding the proposed possibility of a sewer line from the Albany area coming into and utilizing the Athens city facilities. The commissioners, there is kind of a deadline for a portion of this to be turned in, and the commissioners are asking to come to our next meeting, September 17th, to introduce us to this possibility of this sewer. And it would come to us on a regular meeting night, but we would have a planning and development committee meeting planned for next Monday also.
Are they planning on giving a presentation or just
I believe they're planning on giving a presentation.
and then answering questions?
Yeah,
Okay.
and they are aware of our time limits.
Okay.
Also. So it's a introduction to this whole thing.
But they want it turned around rather quickly, didn't they?
This particular part of it needs turned around very quickly, yes.
So they're going to give us, are they expecting something to be
This is not
introduced?
the end all. This is just,
What do they want us to do after their presentation? Are they going to expect something on the 17th to be introduced into council?
I'm not sure.
That would be possible.
I'm going to be attending tomorrow at 11 a.m. Jennifer Fulmer, their consultant, will be down presenting to the county commissioners at their regular meeting. Andy Stone and I are both going, and I believe the planner, Paul Logue, is going to be in attendance. Anybody's welcome to come. It was my understanding that would be also the finishing up the presentation that they will be providing to City Council, so I'd like to see that. So if I glean more information, I'll be happy to share it.
To that end, we respectfully request an opportunity to attend and present to your council a summary of the project background and information of mutual interest at your September 17th meeting. And that's really all
You're asking?
we know.
Okay.
I believe they're looking for some kind of agreement and concept. The nuts and bolts would have to be, and details would have to be worked out later, I think. Paula will be attending, so she'll have a better grasp on it tomorrow.
Great.
And another miscellaneous, long time ago, we talked about the possibility of a joint meeting between Athens City Council and Student Senate. I've finally been able to talk to the president of Student Senate, and he thinks that a joint meeting on September 24th, which is our next committee night, would be a good thing, but he's going to get back and let us know for sure tomorrow, because he's got to pass this through. Our cable vision crew has already checked out the facility at Walter Hall, and with some additional work and some additional cables, we can broadcast from there. So at our meeting next Monday, I'll let you know what they want to say. But there's a real possibility that we might have our next committee meeting on September 24th in Walter Hall. Okay. I'm done.
Is there any more
Are we
miscellaneous?
starting at 7 or 7:30 because of this?
7,
7.
as far as I know.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
We're done.
Okay.